The first thing I want to mention before I read the script is that Zoom meetings have been extended at the state level, but so they affect us as well, till March 31, 2023. So we can keep our meetings on Zoom up till that point if we choose to, or if we decide that we want to start meeting again in person at some point, we can visit that subject and decide. So I just wanted people to know how long into the future Zoom meetings are possible at this point, March 31. So with that, I'm going to read the required Zoom script, but I'm going to try to make this really short. First, I need to confirm that members are present. So I'm going to go down the list of names, and if you are here, please say so. Allison Forsgren.
Here.
Bob Kacharvi.
Here.
Kendra Lockley.
Hold on.
Arlene O'Reilly.
Here.
Jude Perkins. Susie Spring said she would not be here. Nancy Swain.
Here.
Linda Williams.
Here.
And myself. Thank you, everybody. As far as staff goes, today's meeting is being attended by Jericho. So we know that you're here, Jericho. Thank you. And we have no anticipated speakers at this meeting. This open meeting of the Council on Aging is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. And this meeting will not feature public comment. This meeting is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you, and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. I think that's really all that we need to say at this point. We're all very, we could all recite this by heart, I think. So I'm going to go down the agenda. The first thing is you should have all received the agenda in advance. And so we need to approve the agenda. And could someone please make a motion to that effect?
Bob will make the motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. The second was Linda.
Allison.
Oh, Allison, thank you. Okay, I'm going to have to go down the list for approval of the agenda. Allison.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Arlene.
Yes.
Nancy.
Yes.
Linda.
Yes.
Mary Ann, yes. Thank you, everybody. The next thing is approval of the minutes of the last two meetings. So let me first explain that for June, we still do not have written minutes. And I think what I will do is go back and watch the whole program myself with help from you, Jericho. And we have all received the July minutes, for which I have a big shout out to Arlene. Thank you for doing such a fabulous job. Yeah, really.
You're welcome.
And rather than stick you with that today, I think I'll just take on, again, watching this meeting and doing the minutes from that. I hate to put that on you again. So I guess I want to get any comments or changes that people have to the minutes of the last meeting, the July 6th meeting, before we approve them.
I thought they were very, very well detailed, and I didn't see anything that I need to change.
Anybody else have any comments?
Looks good to me.
Yeah, it looks fabulous to me. There are a couple of names that I will give you the correct spelling of before you do the final, but other than that, I just think fabulous job. And thank you so much right out of the chute for doing that, Arlene. Great. So now I need to get approval by, again, going down the list. If you approve these minutes, please say yay. Allison.
Yay.
Bob.
Yeah.
Arlene.
Yay.
Nancy,
Yay.
Linda,
Aye.
Mary Ann, yes. Okay, great, thank you. So now on to the guts of the meeting. The first thing on the agenda today is an election of officers. I went back to the town, to the compliance officer, Maureen Coleman, and asked her, I told her, we don't have a secretary. Should we elect a secretary? Or should we do a whole new slate of officers? And she said, B, a whole new slate of officers would be necessary. So that's our first agenda item today. So I'm going to ask for, I think we should do it in the order of chair, then vice chair, then secretary.
Do we need a secretary, Madam Chair? Because a lot of groups like our Concom and stuff, they don't have secretaries in the bylaw.
I don't know that.
I don't think we've actually had a secretary. We've said, okay, you're taking minutes. Okay.
Oh, we had a secretary when I first joined, but I'm going to ask you, Jericho, are you here?
Yeah, I believe since it's a position with zero actual power, it would be to the discretion of the board. It would just be making official the fact that somebody is taking notes.
Yeah, it's nice to have something to refer to, that's for sure, if you have.
I think
You
as
can
a
designate- Yeah.
as a non-regulatory board, secretary is not an actual, like a recognized position of the board or council. So it would be entirely up to you guys if you want to hold elections for it or do it rotating.
So
I
shall we
don't
take a
think
vote
we
on
can
this?
hold an election for something that's not in the bylaw, and none of the groups I'm on have secretaries. So we can always
And-
appoint somebody and somebody can volunteer.
Well, then who does the minutes? The same person every day?
There can be, or we can rotate. A lot of these other small groups that don't have, let's say quote unquote support staff, they rotate.
Yeah, there's no requirement for us to officially elect a secretary. If that's how you guys want to do it, you can, but it won't be a meaningful, like it doesn't change, like there's no difference in terms of whether you guys pick one, somebody volunteers, or we nominate and vote for them. The only two positions on this that are actual are the chair positions.
So
Well,
back to that again. I will nominate Mary Ann to stay chair for the rest of her life.
I second.
I second.
Mary Ann, you've done such a great job. I can't imagine,
Anybody else?
yeah. So please.
Well, thank you. Does anybody else want to make any other nominations?
Not on your life.
No.
Nope.
Okay, I accept your nomination, Linda. We're gonna have to take a vote on this.
First, before you do that, declare the nominations closed for that position.
Okay, I declare the nominations closed for this position.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go down the list. So now you're voting yay or nay for me to remain as chair. Allison,
2 yays.
you only get one. Bob,
Yay.
Arlene,
Yay.
Nancy,
Yay.
Linda,
5 yeas.
Mary Ann, I guess I'll vote for myself. Okay, thank you for your vote of confidence. I appreciate that. I do think there should be some turnover though, so I'm just going to get my 2 cents in here. I think, next time around, it's time for a change. Maybe it was even this time, according to Maureen Coleman. So the next thing we have to do is the vice chair. So do we have nominations for a vice chair?
I nominate Robert.
Robert, do you accept?
Yes, I will accept.
Oh. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Well, I guess that means that nominations are closed.
Not all jumping up at one time with our hands raised.
Okay, well, now you get to raise your hand. So are you voting yay or nay? Allison,
Yay.
Bob,
Yay.
Arlene,
Yay.
Nancy,
Yay.
Linda,
Yay.
Mary Ann, yes. Congratulations, Bob. Okay, thank you. I'd like to make a comment about secretary because nobody ever volunteered. That's the fact of life here. So the idea of asking for a volunteer at each meeting, well, I don't think that's going to happen. So I guess,
You could adopt a rule where you rotate alphabetically, one person take notes each meeting or something like that.
oh, how do people feel about that?
I'm just awful at it.
Oh, God, I've done it for 40 years. I can't stand it, but I know how to work it. I know how to work it. Put it that way. I had to do them all by the ZBA for 25 years by hand. Ugh.
Mary Ann, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
How frequently do you refer to the secretary's notes? Is this just a one-time shot that we approve them and then they move on? Or is this something that you would refer to maybe a few meetings after they were taken?
I mean, as the person who's planning meetings, I do occasionally
Okay.
look back at them. So,
And-
yes.
And
I
they constitute the official records. They would be entered in as minutes. So to the extent that it matters, this is like the lasting record of the activities of the Council of Aging.
Now, just so you know, under the Governor's Act from a long time ago, minutes only have to be who vote, especially when there are votes taken. Minutes only have to have who was there, briefly what was stated, not verbatim. Minutes are not verbatim, and town council says don't do that. A brief discussion of what it was, and then you have to make a note of what the vote was, who motioned, who seconded, and what the vote was, whether it was unanimous or not, or who abstained. That's really all that has to be in minutes. If we're talking about something complicated, where action has to be taken based on the discussion, then you can get a little bit more in depth, but it is not a verbatim as who said what. It's not that.
Hmm.
So it doesn't have to go crazy.
Well,
Yeah.
given that, so it's not as huge a job as some people might think it is.
So what am I digging my own grave on taking notes?
Well, I
now?
think we should nominate you, Linda.
Oh, yeah.
So
Not
if-
Linda, that was definitely everybody else taking a step back at the let's hear a volunteer.
I may have
right
to leave.
there.
I may have to leave early today, so I'd rather not do it today.
I don't mind doing the minutes for you guys on a
You've done them
regular
before.
basis.
You've
Great,
done
I
it.
nominate Arlene.
I
Okay.
nominate
Bob will
Arlene
second.
too, yes.
Yeah.
Are there any other nominations besides Arlene? Okay, the nominations are closed for secretary. Now we're going to vote. So yay or nay? Allison,
Yay.
Bob,
Yay.
Arlene,
Yay.
okay. Nancy,
Yay.
Linda,
Yay, yay, yay.
Mary Ann, yay. Oh, yes, great. All right.
And
Problem
if you
solved.
can't do them on occasion, I will step in.
Thanks, Linda.
Okay, well, that was all taken care of a lot faster than I expected. So thank you, Arlene.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Bob.
And thank you, Mary Ann.
Yes.
Okay, next thing on the agenda is the mention of the Elder Expo and Health Fair. And for the new people, the Health Fair is one of two big projects that the Council on Aging has each year. The other one being the naming of the Senior Man and Senior Woman of the Year. And we haven't had a health fair in a couple of years because of COVID. And 2 or 3 years ago, 2019 was the last one. And it was the first year that the hospital was up and running. And we combined our efforts with the hospital. So it became known as the Health Fair / Elder Expo. Anyway, it's being resurrected this year. And it will be, we had our very first meeting of the sort of committee, which is basically people from the hospital, some representatives from Council on Aging, although I ended up being the only one there, and then the Center for Elder Affairs, which their representative didn't show up. So it was me and the hospital.
Thank you again.
Not that they couldn't outvote me on everything. So what we decided was, we set a date of October 22nd from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we decided we would have Plan A, which would be a full-scale health fair, although probably smaller than in the past. And Plan B would be what we did last year, which was just flu shots and no real fair. So the other thing is that the hospital has lost their communications person. So thinking about Arlene and the fact that she's in that business and very well known on the island, I've asked her if she would join that committee as well, because I think she can make a big contribution. So we haven't really had our meeting yet, you and I, Arlene, but I'm really hoping that you will join because I think you can make a big contribution to this group. And the other thing is that combined with one person from the hospital, Shay McGuire, the two of us made a senior services on Nantucket brochure. This was years ago. And we've updated a couple of times, but I just want to mention that in planning for the health fair, I talked to Shay, and she's gone out on her own and had it translated into both Spanish and Portuguese.
Wow.
So yeah, fabulous leap forward. So we're going to have that again this year, but it will be in 3 languages, which is really nice. So I'm glad she did that.
Is that available electronically?
Laura always puts a copy on the website, on the salt, where the salt marsh is. I guess it's the Salt Marsh website. I never know what it's called. Salt Marsh Council on Aging. Probably just Salt Marsh. So yes,
It should be
it's
the
on there.
salt, it's the Salt Marsh
It's
site.
the
and I
Salt Marsh,
think-
and it's on that website.
And I believe she includes a link to it into the newsletter.
Oh, she might once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember if it's every time. I'll talk to her about that.
Yeah, and it's not available yet to put up in those 2 languages, but it will be very soon. In other words, they finished doing they haven't printed it yet in either of those languages. They've just finished doing the translations. So I just wanted to mention that. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or comments you want to make about the health fair.
So it will be on the first floor of the hospital or the second floor?
It will be on both floors.
Ooh. And
If-
so,
If COVID doesn't get out of control, of course.
and so who else will be participating?
The hospital is going to do 90% of the actual work on this for sure, but we have the option of suggesting participants. So if you know of some organization or individual who ought to participate and have a booth, now is the time to just say so now, or just send me an email and I'll mention it at the next meeting.
I could probably find a record of who has been there in the past. That would be helpful. I know some of the, services have changed, and if we can get the replacement or the, comparable group to attend, the more notice, the better.
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Agreed.
Anything that you have that could help with the planning, that would be great.
And I can help with that list too, Allison. We created a talk show series during the lockdown called Nantucket Pulse Wellness Series. So
Great.
we had did a lot of outreach to local practitioners that are in the field of health. So just varied people. So I have contacts with that too. So maybe we could come together and create a list.
Yeah, I'll look and see what I have from the last health fair.
And in addition to Arlene, if you, Allison, would like to join this committee, please do. They invited Jude, but she was not there. So maybe you'd like to join the committee.
Let me think on that. I got so many committees going right now.
Okay.
I'm actually looking for a new committee myself, so I might stand back right now, but that will come up later.
Okay. Well, any suggestions you have are definitely welcome.
Okay, great. I have a lot of historical files since we've been doing that, like the regular old flyer. So I'll see if any of those would be helpful moving it forward. But I do remember in planning the last one, the hospital was like, wow. Covered all the bases, so.
Right, and we've talked about ratcheting it back to just health institutions, because last time we had banks represented, not that they aren't, useful and helpful to seniors, but we decided that we would, this coming health fair is going to just be health related booths. Nothing tangential. And of course, definitely flu shots. Okay, next thing on the agenda is an update on the subject of memory cafes for people with dementia. And that is you, Allison.
All right, so we did meet with the community school, Jericho, Marianne, and myself, Brian, and who's the other person at the
She's somebody from the community school.
Yeah, it's their
Leslie?
operations director. Let me pull up the notes. I believe it was Leslie, but I will correct that if that is incorrect.
And so we met with them, and it seemed like it was going to be pretty easy because the community school was going to write a grant for funding for the Memory Cafe. But then they got back to us and said that because it was for seniors, they couldn't apply for it. So I'm not quite sure where that leaves us. I talked to Jericho about it briefly, and the next fiscal year doesn't start until June 2023. And so if we wanted to apply for a grant through what?
So the consideration I had offered to them for funding was to have them apply to the CRC, which is the Contract Review Committee. If they were a properly constituted 501c, I believe 3K, but a 501(3), sorry, a 501c rather. If they were a 501c, they could apply for and receive town funding, which would then allow them to fund this. That funding is released fiscal year 20, the following fiscal year. So if you applied for it this fall, the earliest you would get the money would be after the change of the fiscal year in 2023. I spoke offline with Brian about alternate funding sources or alternate organizations that could receive funding. NCEA could apply for a CRC grant to receive some of the human services funding that's distributed through there. The specific problem with the community school was that the 501 that they use is their mission is directly targeting youth operations, and they felt it was outside of the mission of that organization that the community school uses to receive these fundings. Basically, like the Salt Marsh has NCEA to receive donations. The community school has another nonprofit that receives their donations and their grant money, and they did not feel comfortable doing elder focused materials. I'm looking for other nonprofits that could receive town money, but as my mom mentioned, it will only get released for next year.
And so if we had a program up and running and could fund it prior to that, the funds could be reimbursed to whomever or used to go forward, or?
It would be used to go forward. You can't reimburse for activities taken before the grant goes active, and the grants are tied to the fiscal year. So if you did a bunch of work on the grant and spent a bunch of money, you could not explicitly state that the grant would be to cover stuff you've done in the past. It'd be like, Marianne picked up the 2 grants. She can only use the grant money for, like, for example, the caregiver grant. She can only use the caregiver grant during the period of time that grant is open and running. And our grants only start the fiscal year following the decision process. So you couldn't use money before the grant goes out without doing some accounting sleight of hand.
Oh, sleight of hand, not for me. But I will say that NAMI wrote a grant to Elder Services and it wasn't awarded. So they have all the information and material and budgets. You know, what would we need to ask of them when it comes to, I mean, if we said, okay, it's gonna cost $10,000, you know, to run this memory cafe for a year, if you get this grant, it'll be for X. Will you pay for the 10 grand that we spend? I mean, I just don't know how to phrase it to them. I think that they might be interested in doing it. They were before.
Yeah, I mean, NAMI is also, they come to us for funding as well. So NAMI could receive the grant if they, if you guys work out the programming with them, they could be a pass through. So they would essentially just take the money from the town as a, you know, a 501 as a nonprofit. They can receive the town grant money and then pass it on to community school in order to do the actual, like they would essentially be receiving a grant and then subcontracting the work out to the community school. That would be one way to approach it. Another way to approach it would be NCEA either funds the initial part of the process and then applies for like ongoing funds, and we could work out some way to recompense initial expenses through that. Or potentially, yeah, that's actually, we would need a nonprofit, and then we'd need the nonprofit to work with the community school. So the community school would be, it has to be in the loop on any conversation because they'll likely have to sign a memorandum of understanding to make official any relationship between them. And that would have to be included in the grant application. It gets kind of, obviously it gets very abstract and boring.
Right, I
have
mean,
a-
I
I have
just,
I have
okay,
a
go ahead.
question.
No, no, no.
What about the grants that were given by the hospital? My first question is, have those dried up? Because I know that they were for a certain number of years and then they would go away. And the hospital,
The hospital social services grants that went out to community fund.
right,
Yeah, those, I believe it was the CHIP funds is the
there was
name
a
of that
sunset
money.
on that?
Yeah, that wrapped up. It was a 5-year period. I think it
Okay.
served as seed money for CFN. We just had the wrap up of that like last month. where it
Okay,
was
so
the
that's
official
not
end of the
a
program.
possibility. But what about the community foundation, which is now saying they want to do something for seniors? And I know we're a little bit ahead of their timetable on this, but do you think we could go to them now and give them at least the first of an idea that would help seniors?
Yeah, and they're going to have a lot fewer strings about dispersing the funds than we do. I think it still needs to, I think they can act as a pass-through agent for community schools. It might not be a bad idea to, I have a meeting with Margareta tomorrow about unrelated grant stuff. I can talk to them about it while I'm in that meeting, but it might not be a bad idea. Allison, if you want to, we can reply to, I can talk back to Brian to discuss possibly CFN being interested as a pass through because they want to start elder stuff, but it's probably not a bad idea if you follow up as well. If you just want to reply to him with the potential of being like this, there's CFN expressed interest in doing elder facing work. This is one good example we could bring to him. We should probably talk about it.
So basically, so I did converse with Taylor Hiltz at the hospital, Rachel Day at Sherburne, and Aaron Kopecki, who runs out of Sherburne Commons an elder care business, just because we need a facilitator. And I got, no one was jumping up and down about it. But in going over what the time commitment would be for a facilitator, I was able to, I mean, there are certain things that sort of could be parsed out. Well, let me just pull it up. Sorry, wasn't prepared. But hold on. So it says that the Memory Cafe Program Volunteer Coordinator task and time requirement template came from the Memory Cafe Toolkit, which is a really comprehensive guide to how to set up a memory cafe. But the tasks mentioned are purchasing food for the cafe, setting up, hosting, cleaning up the cafe, planning for the program cafe sessions, updating the flyer, mailing to cafe guests and providers, entering new guest information in the mailing list, miscellaneous such as developing and writing policies, answering questions from callers, outreach, and volunteer coordination. Those are the tasks. The hours per month, according to the task list, are 20.5 hours. And that's per month.
Sorry,
Many-
Alice, did you say 20.5?
Yeah, 20.5. And I'm happy to share this document as well, but for instance, purchasing food for the cafe, an hour and a half. I think that could be outsourced to somebody else, whether it's a volunteer or and then setting up for the cafe. Would the community school be set? Are we paying the community school for the space? Is setting up part of that, deal with them? Same thing with cleaning up. I think that the two tasks that a facilitator definitely needs to have are the hosting and the planning program for the cafe sessions. But updating the flyers, Jericho, do you have any staff that could be helpful in any of these tasks that we could remove responsibility from a facilitator?
Frankly, no.
Okay.
Some of the auxiliary communication stuff, yes, we can have Laura in the loop to do some of the communications and background. We would need to work out specifically with Brian and the community school how they want to handle it. I think they're really used to running these programs and would likely be doing most of that stuff in-house.
Mhm.
At least from my read on the meeting we had, was that
Yeah.
basically they need money to go through it and a facilitator. And once we have either of those two things, or once we have both of those things, we should be pretty much good to go on it.
Yeah, and so, what I said to them in the meeting early, in my communication is, basically, what is it, what would it cost to have somebody pick up those hours? And they all sort of said, well, we don't have a lot of time, but what's the skinny as far as minimum hours? So if we could bring the minimum hours down by outsourcing some of those tasks, it might be more interesting for them. One of them said that $75 an hour for somebody who's an RN or a CNA or something would be an appropriate hourly rate, but that, if it were, but that would likely be for the shortened, the 4 hours a session as opposed to the 20 hours so yes, finding someone and what we pay them. I don't think that they'll be, I think that there are funding sources. So who are we going to get to hire? And so when I mentioned having another committee, maybe it would be, maybe if someone from NCEA and someone from this board worked with the facilitator to sort of give some backbone to the program that, and some guidance, that's something that I would encourage.
Does anybody have any questions for Allison on this or comments that you want to make, even in general, about memory cafes?
Do we all know what a memory cafe is? It's a dementia treatment. Isn't probably the right term for it, but it's a dementia Alzheimer's related
Outreach.
event. Yeah, outreach event, which is both for caregivers and for the person themselves. And it's an attempt to use various different stimuli and contexts to provoke emotional and
Meaningful
memory-based
activity.
responses. Yeah, exactly. And I think it from where I left off with Brian, if we can find a funding source, I think he seems pretty confident that he can handle the facilitator issue. And I think that we're not too far off from being able to handle that. I think the NAMI possibility or CFN directly participating, especially considering their interest in focusing on some elder related projects. I think that's probably the best bet. I'll follow up with that on Thursday, tomorrow.
So, Allison, do you think that you could put together a budget, or you and I could put together a budget and I could take it to NCEA, or you could take it to NCEA at their next meeting, which is the third Wednesday of the month?
Yeah, except for how much we pay somebody, that's,
I think we have a guideline already, so we're not
Okay.
doing a budget that's set in stone. But
okay, yep, we can do that.
okay,
And there will be ancillary costs and a different budget component that the community school will come forward and bring with it too. So likely, I
Like
think, well, there'll probably be a charge for space. There'll probably be Brian mentioned they charge an administrative fee to do this that's built into the grant, which would cover a lot of the administrative, the organizing, the cleaning up, the renting of the space kind of thing. Like, it's not renting the space, it's
Overhead
basically,
costs.
yeah, it's a way for them to amortize overhead across a variety of different programs, basically. It's really standard. We would be doing it everywhere. I think if you gave a rough ballpark figure to NCEA and to try to gauge interest from there, that might be the best way to go about it. And this is the sort of one-time expense, although on the large size that the Salt Marsh Gift Fund is designed to do, is to assist in startup. If we can get either some sort of matching contribution from elsewhere, we could potentially use some gift fund money to get this started. But I'm really trying to keep the Salt Marsh Gift Fund intact for unexpected costs.
well, just to wrap up, it looks like Allison and I will approach NCEA, and you, Jericho, and Allison will approach the Community Foundation. Is that it? Next step forward? Is
Sure.
that okay with you, Allison? Okay,
Yep.
great. Anything else on the subject of memory cafes before we move on to Jericho's report? Okay, Jericho, you're on the stage.
Just making a very brief memo of that thing I said I was going to do, because if I don't, I won't remember it. Okay, basic update from me. I'll start with the COVID nuts and bolts, go really quickly through that, and then move on to some behavioral health stuff. It's summertime, so there isn't a huge amount of stuff to report. We got our wastewater test in, sample collected last Monday. It's suggesting between 30 and 35 a day with a mild decrease in absolute number. I don't quite trust it. I think it's probably safe to say that we are at the highest number of transmissions that we've had at any point up until now during the pandemic. Fortunately, we don't have any we have no spikes in hospitalization. There were zero, as of last week, there were zero primary COVID diagnoses that led to hospitalization or to medevac. So in kind of the new endemic regime, we're doing quite well. I would anticipate that we'll see a pretty steady state for COVID cases over the course of the summer due to high population. We'll start to see it fall in the fall. And then as we move indoors, we're going to start seeing the same pattern we saw last year, but with a more infectious version or variant of the disease. Although we should be getting specifically Omicron targeted boosters, as well as the next round of boosters in this fall. So it shouldn't be quite the same picture as we had last year, but there will be pretty active COVID going around, I think, for most of the winter. We have clinics planned. Anyone who needs boosters can go to the town page for vaccine. It's nantucket-ma.gov/vaccine, and you can sign up right there. We've got clinics lined up for the next 2. They're a combination of boosters, first or second boosters, so third or fourth doses, and then as many pediatric cases as we can get done. So if you know anyone who has any kids or any school-age children who have not gotten a booster before the school year, now is the time to check that out. There probably won't be too many opportunities after school year starts. As for other activities, we've got the behavioral health initiative that we're also working on with CFN. We've split off into two groups, one with a youth focused and one with a crisis response group. One of the things I'm trying to work into that in parallel with CFN's elder focus stuff is going to be some elder facing behavioral health stuff. So I think one of the ways I can probably try and lever that a little bit tomorrow when I talk to them in the context of behavioral health revision. Because right now we have a crisis response revision planned and we have a youth focused program, because those were the two initial gaps that we decided on as a large group. And with CFN wanting to move into elder space, we can probably get some, value add, if you will, by combining efforts with the COA, the Behavioral Health Initiative, and the Community Fund. Other than that, that's basically all of my major ongoing initiatives at the moment. If anyone has any questions on any town business or any COVID related stuff or anything about the behavioral health or any other questions you think I might know about, please feel free.
Are there any questions or comments for Jericho? I have one. Are there a lot of elder people in crisis?
So in this context, crisis means emergency phone call. Basically, if you're in a behavioral health crisis, who do you call? At the moment, what we have is if you are insured, you call here. If you're not insured, you call here. If you're under MassGov, this is who you talk to, and so on and so forth. So what this is an attempt to have one unified reporting system, one unified care system, and one unified response. I don't believe there's a particularly large problem with crisis calls for seniors specifically. It's pretty generally across the demographics. So I don't think there's a specific elders in crisis in the context of this. There are absolutely people who are having crisis related stuff. And I think a lot of the stuff, I think the CFN related elder focused stuff will primarily be kind of an attempt to bridge that gap.
I know that people contact elder services for crises as well. I don't know if there's a tie-in to the town from that.
This is a very specific definition of crisis. It literally is just the immediate risk mitigation, like a 911.
911 call.
It's
Okay.
not a more. It's a sort of limited version of the word crisis.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Linda.
This may be off topic, it may not be. I was thinking about crisis as I'm sitting with my face planted in my fan. In various places around the country, they have cooling centers. Do we have a cooling center here? Because they shut everything off at the high school, so it ain't there. Do we have anywhere for people to go on for a cooling center, especially elderly, because elderly are very susceptible to high heat. And I know a lot of them are being seen because of Wheels on Wheels, but there are people in these older houses that are probably suffocating in there.
I know that the Generation Safe program under NFD handles a lot of those particular home improvement related calls. And I know that there's a fair amount of check-in with that program. We also have like the state will send out heat advisory warnings, and then those are usually forwarded on to public safety, which is in the fantastic way that government works, not this department and not human services and not elder. That's the police and the fire department. I have been trying to talk to Sean Mitchell about the Generation Safe program, but as you can imagine, he is somewhat busy at the moment. So, yeah.
Didn't know if there was some kind of newsletter we could put out, or they can come to the senior center, because this heat's going to be brutal for the next couple of days on top of it, but it has been brutal on and off on July. And I didn't know if anybody was, they don't have window units, and they, it's hot, and they're going to be really susceptible.
Yeah, no, that is a concern, and not something that we have a huge infrastructure built around, because this is not typically a place that requires significant amount of heat preparedness. I know that going forward, that's going to be a topic of discussion in a variety of places. But I don't think I have anything short term to like as a place to go. specific and not certainly not one that's elder focused. Basically what I would tell people is go to the salt marsh, where we keep it cool and relatively AC
Yeah,
friendly.
but they're only open until 3:30 or 4:30 or something.
Yeah.
I know. I don't have a particularly good answer to that.
And, you know, what's funny is because when there's a weather event, we have the school, we have a warming center up at the school, you know, we have all that stuff for warming center. But as we see these summers being 90 degrees with a 150-degree humidity like today, that really takes a toll on older people. I mean, they've had a lot of deaths in cities around the country, all the way to California, with elderly without air conditioning and nobody's checking on them and all the rest of that stuff, you know. That's
Yeah,
tough.
I know that our in-home elderly safety focused stuff is, generation safe primarily, that was something that was on the list of their things to be concerned about over the next 5 years. I think that the heat increase, coupled with the higher utility costs, surprised a lot of people, and that we can be working on it, but I don't think we're going to have a stable or durable solution to it in this summer, for example.
All right, I just don't want it to fall off the radar since.
Yeah, I
this
mean,
is
too
only
bad there
gonna get
wasn't
worse.
some like emergency, I mean, I
mean, as of right now, it has to get to the point of it being something that can be either someone who's on a regular check-in list with the Generation Safe program, or somebody who's getting to the point where they're calling the hospital, at which case, fire department or somebody gets involved. I think I will reach out to the fire department to see if I can get any numbers on if they've had calls like this or if Generation Safe is on it. But it is not going to be a quick turnaround with them right now, with the internal situation there. Like, I don't know how quickly I'll hear back.
mean, hopefully their internal situation is not going to be affecting.
It won't be
Generation
affecting
or-
crisis calls, but I mean,
Right.
Sean Mitchell ran Generation Safe,
Right.
and that's part of the decision-making process there. Like, you can't, they won't have any fall down on crisis response or 911 or going to fire calls, but they're forward-facing plans. Like, it's people doing it, and when the person can't do it anymore, if there's nobody else there who's capable or willing of doing it, there's going to be interruptions in the longer term planning processes.
Oh, Linda, thank you for bringing that up. It's I think a really important job for the town to have a cooling place for not just, for people who live in overcrowded living situations, for people,
It's something that due to geography, we haven't had to think about as much until very recently. And yeah, Linda, it is something that we do need to be ahead on a little more.
So Jericho, as I understand it, you'll investigate this further?
I'll reach out to NFD to see what they know about it and if there's any other approaches that they can think of.
Is it possible that at our meeting next month, you could report back to us so that we could see how this is moving along and maybe eventually develop a plan or be part of developing a plan?
Yeah, this is a huge problem globally, so there's going to be movement on higher levels than us in terms of what we can do locally. I don't want to overpromise with what I personally can do on this particular topic. I'm definitely going to get. I will check with NFD and see if there's anything that they know about it, and see if there's any other stones for me to turn over. And I'm happy to report about it next month.
Fortunately,
wonder
it
if it
won't be
could be-
like. Fortunately, it's not going to be like recreating the wheel because other places have done it
Yes.
ahead of us because of where they are located. So we can maybe take, let someone else or copy a good example of a small community taking care of their overheated people.
Yeah, I mean, the shape of general solutions to this is either there's a way to temporarily give people window units or something like that, or there's a place that they can go to cool down. But this is we run into a lot of the same problems we have with a lot of the different programs we have planned, but we don't have places to put in. I will tell you right now, I think that this requires a larger, addressing this problem in a meaningful and significant way requires more resources than the Human Services Department of the town of Nantucket. And any approach to it would have to be kind of like systematic, like this is a climate change issue, which is a significantly wider in scope and necessary resources than what I have. What I'm going to start to do on this is I'm going to try and identify the scale of the problem and who the particular people are who would know that, and then see if there are any plans in place. And then I'll bring that information to you so that when we go and discuss with other people what we would like to see done, or we make recommendations elsewhere, we have a pretty complete picture of what it looks like on the island.
Laura can put out a questionnaire or something like that in the newsletter that reaches 500 some odd people. She can put that out in the newsletter that we're looking into this for those who are stressed by the climate. And we can always use the ugliest building on Nantucket, which is right next to your building.
I would love to. We can't use that as general, that's meeting space now, and it's actually fairly well in use.
It's a terrible place, terrible.
It's not great.
Terrible.
It's definitely not great. I know, as I
I
spent,
couldn't hear anything that was being said because of that air conditioning unit in the window.
What about the VFW?
that's a
Well,
whole
we
can
have-
of worms. The town will never again enter into a contract with the VFW for any purposes. So it would have to be not the town.
It's a nice big space.
Yep, and it's air conditioned.
After the whole VFW vaccine clinic thing, I do not see town management signing another significant contract with the VFW with its current management.
Yes.
Okay. And I agree. Great suggestion. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay.
Are we ready to move on to the next thing on the agenda? Is actually Laura Stewart, and she's not here today, but everyone did get her report. So you see what's going on at the Salt Marsh. And if you have questions for her, feel free to send her an email at any time. So Allison, how about your report on Elder Services of Cape Cod and the Islands?
They take the month of July off, so I don't have any report from them, although we meet on August 26th, so next month I will.
Okay. And I'm next with a report on the home modifications grant, which is temporarily stalled. Steve Melu, who's our installer, handyman, has really been felled by heat exhaustion. He is a senior. And he has taken some time off as a result. So he and I have agreed that we will regroup in mid-August and begin serving the needs of these seniors then. So fortunately, our people who are waiting for these grab bars, mostly grab bars, are not in a hurry to get them. So they understand that it's going to be even longer than they anticipated. And that's just the way it is right now.
Well, speaking of heat issues,
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And I think he was correct to just stop working because his planned retirement hasn't worked out as quickly as he thought it would. So he's just overworked, and being overworked, being over 70, having too much on his plate, he did the right thing of just stopping everything, taking some time off.
Should we consider getting another person, or is there?
I would love to, but I don't want to advertise because I want it to be a person, it's got to be a person who's got a lot of experience, not a 25-year-old, and somebody who has time and who is willing to participate. So if you know somebody who meets those qualifications, yeah, let's talk about them. Yeah, I
Okay.
definitely would like to find, one or even two more people. A couple of people came recently to my house because I had an influx of about 10,000 bees. And so it required somebody to cut a hole in my house to get the bees out and then replace it. So I didn't I left them with the idea of, would you like to do this? Let me know if you'd like to do this. I don't know. I think they're overworked already too. But if you know somebody, let me know. And then the last thing on our agenda today is NCEA, whose meetings I attend. I want everyone to know they have a new president. Joe Aguiar, who's been their president for a number of years, has stepped down, and the new president is John Copenhaver. I don't know if people know him. He's been very active at the Salt Marsh. He oversees one of the bridge games, and he's very active in the Salt Marsh. So that's a change at the top there. They have new officers, and he's the new president. You might see from the Salt Marsh newsletter, they're actively working the grant they got from Landmark House, which specifies it must be for social activities. It has to be something that brings people together. So that's why they've been doing the lunch regularly. And they have activities planned for every one of the coming months. So in June, they're going to do a Father's Day. In June, they did a Father's Day brunch. In July, they did muffin morning, where you could either pick up your muffin and leave with it, or you could stay and have it there. In August, they're planning this cookout. You've probably seen that advertised, where the men are going to do all the cooking. And then in September, they're planning an ice cream social. So money is tight with the NCEA because they put all that money into refurbishing the Salt Marsh, but they are planning at least one major activity for every month.
And that's paid for by the Landmark grant?
The lunches are paid for with the Landmark grant, which will eventually be supplanted by Elder Services going back to doing the regular lunches that they were doing before COVID.
Oh, and I just wanted to add, I've reached out to Sherry Hunt at Elder Services to see if we can assist with food delivery, which I think was one of the stumbling blocks for them moving forward with picking up congregate care
Food
or
delivery?
congregate lunch. So they've contracted with Kitties to do the food, but they've been Sherry said she was running into a stumbling block negotiating a contract for delivery. Taxi services usually pick the food up and drop it off. I offered both myself and Laura as potential drivers, and I'm just waiting to hear back from Sherry.
I mean, from Kitties to Landmark House? Like that's across the street.
No, Kitties to congregate lunch at Salt Marsh.
Oh.
And they were also looking for volunteers to be waiters and waitresses. I volunteered to be a waitress one day a week. So they're looking for volunteers. So anybody who's interested in either Meals on Wheels or being a waiter or waitress for the congregate lunch, please contact Sherry Hunt at Elder Services.
What is the time commitment for that, Marianne?
1.5 hours.
Starting,
Well, I don't think they have a start date yet.
I know, but starting at 11 or when?
Usually around 11.
11:30, I think. 11:30.
Tuesdays. I think it's Tuesdays and Thursdays or Tuesdays and Fridays they're planning on doing it, right, Marianne?
Well, I volunteered for Wednesday, so if that's changing, I
It should be every day, the congregate lunch.
I think they've tried more than 2 days a week and it doesn't work for whatever reason.
Well, I can do a different day. Wednesday was the most convenient for me.
It was always every day, something that you could plan on.
Every weekday, yeah.
Yeah, every weekday. That's how the congregate lunches used to work.
I don't believe they're going to be going back to it. I do not know what the plan for the Elder Services funded one is, the one for NCEA and the one that we funded for the stopgap until NCEA picked it up. That was 2 days a week. I don't know what the plan forward is.
Elder Services is all of the other senior centers have Meals on Wheels congregate programs that are dependable 5 days a week.
I have not seen a plan or timetable or anything from Elder Services, so I can't speculate on what it's going to look like.
I think she's looking for volunteers to to actually wait and waitress, and when she has them, she'll start it up.
As I was understanding it, it was not a problem with the distribution at Salt Marsh. It was that she could not get the food to Salt Marsh for a price she was comfortable paying.
Okay,
So I offered to drive it there for her, and I'm waiting to hear back.
okay.
So anybody who wants to volunteer, please let Sherry Hunt know at Elder Services. We've come to the end of our agenda, but I want to make sure anybody who has any questions or comments on these subjects or any subjects, now is a good time. Or forever hold your peace.
It's the dog days, so I'm holding my peace.
Yes, we've all got our faces in the fan, I think. Does somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Bob will make it.
Thank you, Bob.
I'll second.
Thank you, Linda. I'm going to go down the list. Allison,
Yes.
Bob,
Yes.
Arlene,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Linda,
Yep.
Marianne, yes. Thanks, everybody, for being here, even though it's the dog days, and congrats to our new officers.
Yes, thank you.
Looking forward to
Thank
another year.
I'm just gonna go sit in my air-conditioned car in my driveway.
That's a good idea.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you
All
very
right,
much.
thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.